Phil Mickelson wasn't just one of golf's biggest stars. For years, he was golf's most unpredictable superstar. Fans loved him because he took risks that nobody else would dare take. He hit impossible shots, smiled through pressure, and somehow made the impossible look routine. He wasn't perfect. In fact, that was exactly why millions connected with him. But then everything changed. The man who was once celebrated as golf's ultimate fan favorite became one of the most controversial figures the sport has ever seen. Sponsors disappeared, friends distanced themselves, fans were divided, and a career built over decades suddenly seemed on the verge of collapsing. So how did one of the greatest golfers in history go from being loved by almost everyone to becoming one of the most polarizing names in sports? Stay with us, because this story is far more complicated than most people realize. And if you enjoy deep stories about golf, legends, and the biggest moments shaping the sport, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We bring you new golf stories every week. Phil Mickelson's journey began long before private jets, major championships, and million-dollar endorsements. Born in San Diego, California, Phil picked up a golf club almost before he could walk. His father wasn't a professional golfer, but he loved the game enough to teach his son everything he knew. There's one detail that has become legendary. Phil learned by standing opposite his father and mirroring his swing. Since his father was right-handed, Phil naturally developed a left-handed swing despite being naturally right-handed in many everyday activities. That unusual beginning earned him the nickname that would stay with him forever, Lefty. Even as a junior golfer, people knew he was special. He dominated amateur tournaments and quickly became one of America's brightest young talents. At Arizona State University, he won multiple NCAA titles and built a reputation as someone who could attack any golf course without fear. Then something extraordinary happened. In 1991, while still an amateur, Mickelson won a PGA Tour event. Think about that for a moment. Amateurs simply weren't supposed to beat the best professionals in the world. Yet Phil did exactly that. It instantly announced that a future superstar had arrived. When he turned professional, expectations couldn't have been higher. And for years, he delivered. Fans loved his fearless style. While many golfers carefully played for the middle of the fairway, Phil aimed for impossible lines. If there was a tiny opening through a forest of trees, he'd try it. If there was water guarding the green, he'd attack anyway. Sometimes it ended in disaster, but sometimes it produced shots that people still watch decades later. Golf suddenly became exciting whenever Phil was near the top of the leaderboard. His smile, confidence, and willingness to gamble made him different from everyone else. He wasn't trying to play perfect golf. He wanted unforgettable golf. That approach made him one of the PGA Tour's biggest attractions throughout the late 1990s and early 2000s. There was only one problem: the major championships. Despite winning tournament after tournament, Phil couldn't win golf's biggest prizes. Again and again, he'd come painfully close. Second place, third place, heartbreaking mistakes. Every year the questions became louder. Was Phil simply too reckless? Would he ever become a major champion? Critics started calling him the greatest player never to win a major. That label followed him everywhere. Then came Augusta National, the 2004 Masters. Everything changed. Standing over an 18-foot birdie putt on the final hole, Mickelson knew what was at stake. When the ball dropped into the cup, he leaped into the air with one of the most iconic celebrations golf has ever seen. Years of frustration disappeared in a single moment. Phil Mickelson was finally a major champion. The floodgates opened. Over the following years, he won more majors, including another Masters title, a PGA Championship, and the Open Championship. He became one of the defining golfers of his generation. By then, his rivalry with Tiger Woods had become one of the biggest attractions in sports. Tiger represented relentless perfection. Phil represented fearless creativity. Together, they transformed golf into must-watch television. Even fans who weren't regular golf followers tuned in whenever those two names appeared near the top of a leaderboard. Their rivalry wasn't built on hatred. It was built on contrast. Two completely different personalities. Two completely different styles. One unforgettable era. Off the course, Phil became just as successful. Major endorsement deals poured in. Companies wanted the smiling left-hander representing their brands. His popularity reached incredible heights. For years, it seemed like nothing could derail his career. But beneath the surface, another side of Phil existed. Okay, he loved taking risks away from golf as much as he did on it. Over time, stories began emerging about enormous gambling habits, not casual betting. Massive wagers that reportedly reached astonishing amounts. Phil later acknowledged he had struggled with gambling and described it as an addiction that affected parts of his life. He said he sought help and worked to move forward. Many fans appreciated that honesty. Others wondered how much damage had already been done behind the scenes. Still, his image remained largely intact. Then came 2021. At 50 years old, when almost everyone believed his best golf was behind him, Phil stunned the sporting world once again. At the PGA Championship, he defeated players nearly half his age. Against all expectations, he became the oldest major champion in golf history. It was one of the greatest comeback stories sports had ever seen. Fans celebrated. Commentators called it impossible. The golfing world fell in love with Phil all over again. It felt like the perfect ending. Except, it wasn't the ending. It was the beginning of the biggest controversy of his career. Around this time, professional golf was changing. A new league backed by Saudi Arabia's public investment fund was preparing to challenge the PGA Tour. The league promised guaranteed money unlike anything golf had ever seen. Many players were curious. Most stayed quiet. Phil didn't. Private conversations became public. Comments he reportedly made about the new league and its backers sparked enormous backlash. He acknowledged serious concerns about Saudi Arabia's human rights record, while also suggesting the new league could provide leverage against the PGA Tour. Those remarks quickly spread around the world and drew criticism from fans, players, and sponsors. The reaction was immediate. Several longtime sponsors ended their relationships with him. Fans questioned everything. Some defended Phil. Others believed he had crossed a line. Suddenly, one of golf's most beloved figures found himself at the center of a global controversy. For months, he disappeared from public competition. When he finally returned, it wasn't to the PGA Tour. He joined LIV Golf. His decision permanently changed how many people viewed him. Supporters argued players deserved freedom to choose where they played. Critics believed money had become more important than tradition. The debate dominated golf for years. Phil wasn't simply another player joining LIV. He became one of its biggest faces. Every tournament, every interview, every appearance reignited arguments across the golfing world. Friendships between players became strained. Fans split into opposing camps. Golf itself seemed divided. Phil embraced the challenge. He insisted the sport needed change and believed competition between tours would benefit players. Others remained unconvinced. The image of the smiling fan favorite had been replaced by something much more complicated.
Just when many believed the controversy surrounding Phil Mickelson had finally begun to fade, a new wave of allegations thrust him back into the headlines. In 2026, a female employee at a Southern California golf club accused Mickelson of inappropriate physical contact, an allegation that reportedly led to his departure from the club. Around the same time, Ashley Perez, the former wife of PGA Tour player Pat Perez, publicly alleged that Mickelson had made unwanted sexual advances toward her during a tournament in 2015, including showing her an explicit photo of himself. Mickelson has denied the allegations through his representatives, describing the reports as misleading and maintaining that they do not accurately reflect the facts. Even so, the allegations reignited debate over his legacy and ensured that his name remained at the center of golf's biggest controversy.
Today, Phil Mickelson's legacy remains one of the most fascinating in sports. Statistically, he's one of the greatest golfers ever. Over 40 PGA Tour victories, 6 major championships, 3 Masters titles, a career Grand Slam missing only the US Open, where he finished runner-up a record 6 times. Some of the greatest recovery shots ever played. One of the most memorable major victories at age 50. Those achievements can never be erased. But neither can the controversies. His gambling struggles, his outspoken criticism of the PGA Tour, his decision to become a leading figure in LIV Golf, his comments that reshaped public opinion almost overnight. History will likely remember Phil Mickelson as both a golfing genius and one of the sport's most controversial modern figures. Very few athletes experience such extraordinary highs and such dramatic lows. Perhaps that's what makes his story unforgettable. It isn't simply the rise of a champion or the fall of a superstar. It's the story of a man whose brilliance and flaws were always impossible to separate. And maybe that's why, even today, whenever Phil Mickelson steps onto a golf course, the world still watches. Because whether you admire him, criticize him, or simply remain fascinated by him, you never quite know what he'll do next. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Phil Mickelson's legacy should be defined by his incredible achievements or by the controversies that changed his career? We'd love to hear your opinion. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next golf story.